My ugly point is pretty simple and straightforward. It's just that the PGL Cluj-Napoca, again, disclaimer, I am working the event, but also it's like I think this is something that it wouldn't even matter. It's just that the PGL Cluj-Napoca format is better than the majors format. That's my ugly point.
So BO3 Swiss is what you want. Full BO3.
BO3 Swiss with BO5 major grand final.
Right.
I think yeah. I mean, the way that this is playing out, we're getting the right teams winning. Like, I feel like the way that it's broken down so far in terms of who's 3-0, who's 0-3, like who's 2, like it's very light on upsets. I'll just tell you that. Like, even if you look at it in terms of ranking, it's almost perfect right now. It's almost perfectly the top 8 teams are there, and the top 8 teams, I mean, are in like the 2-1 or 3-0 categories, and the bottom 8 teams are outside of it. I think the only literal exception via VRS rank is Pain is like 1 higher than Astralis. But if you kind of been watching closely, I think people would think that like Astralis's VRS rank is a little bit fake. It's like it's just kind of a remnant of things from the past, you know? So all in all, I think it's playing out exactly how it should be. And I think that the fact that it just sucks right now that I think we're going backwards in like the crowning jewel event of the season will still be the major, but the format that is giving us the best results possible is probably what PGL is putting out right now. Like I don't see how I think this is hyper competitive in terms of, yeah, sure, we don't have the best teams. That's a different conversation. I'm just saying that the best format is this. Like, if you're doing 16 teams, Swiss with an 8-team playoff bracket single elim is one of the sickest things you could possibly be doing right now. So I think that when we get to the Austin Major, it's gonna feel a little bit hollow in comparison, where we're so used to watching these really competitive formats. Like even Kato's format I think it's better than what we're getting at the major. And I think that Valve needs to just wake up to the fact that, yeah, we have the capabilities to do these kinds of tournaments. Like we can do, I know like before in the past it was like, oh, we want to do the BO1s because it like eliminates a day, but it's like we just added like 5 more days to the major anyways. So clearly we can do it. And I don't think the TOs are even against doing that necessarily. Whoever is hosting the major probably wants the extra viewer hours. Like, that's how you make money from a stream. You get more watch hours. So I don't know why they wouldn't. If they're running a tournament at a profit, then they want more hours. And I think many of us as CS fans, and the more hardcore ones especially, just want the most competitive format. So yeah, I think the ugly point is the major is going to have a worse format than PGL Cluj-Napoca.
I think the key thing is the best of threes, right? Because I think it was Lurpus did it like literally years ago. Is like statistically a best of 1 and best of 3. Like the difference isn't as big as you might expect for the favorite winning, but it's the feeling you get when you're watching. Like if an underdog wins a best of 3, it means like, well, they've got a deep enough map pool to win a best of 3, first of all. And it just means so much more watching an upset that's a best of 3. Like if someone had upset and was 2-0 at PGL, it's like, well, you've won best of 3s against good teams. You deserve to be there. At the major, there's these asterisks on underdogs, and it doesn't feel like they've earned it as much as they would do in a tournament like this. And I think that actually is annoying for the teams as well, because it's like, well, we've earned it, but because it's best of 1s, everyone just writes them off. Whereas now, I think it just benefits everyone.
Lurpus's BO1, BO3 thing, though, surely that's in MR15 instead of MR12, right? Like when he was
years ago. It was like 10 years ago.
Yeah. So it was MR15. And I know that you guys, I think it might have been you making an article about MR12 and the chance that you win or whatever, but it's still, yeah, I guess the feeling, but like MR12 BO1 is inherently more random than MR15 anything, you know? So just saying.
Yeah, and it definitely is, but I also think that that's just made best of 3s more random as well. I still think that the difference wouldn't be as much as you think, and I think it's the same for best of 5, but it's, you know, it's an entertainment product as well, and I want underdogs to feel like, I want upsets. At the end of an upset, I want to go, okay, fair play, that was a good game. It wasn't just you won the 4 key gun rounds where teams both had no money. Like that. And that's MSL was a different ugly point in itself, but yeah, I think I'm really liking the format, and I hate it when teams skip stages. Like, I just hate it so much. I hate teams starting in semifinals. I hate teams winning 2 best of 3s and just being on like a lucky side of a bracket, and then the lower bracket at Katowice, for example, it's like 5 best of 3s or something. Yeah. It's just who you're playing. It's just how the seeding lines up for you, especially now teams are using VRS for seeding, which is just bringing us back to nightmare days for some of these events. But But yeah, overall, I think 100% agree. I think this format is way better.
Right, the real problem with that Lurpus one is Lurpus himself is someone, I used to have the same idiosyncrasy, who doesn't actually control for intangible factors that can't be represented in the game in the same way. So, for example, I can tell you what he did when he did that. He just took a bunch of tournaments, took all the BO1s, looked at who the higher seed was, ran the numbers of did they win the game or not, then did the same thing with BO3s. Right, I'll tell you an immediate way he didn't control for an obvious factor, which is in tournaments where you only had BO1s in the group stage, that was most of the early days, that means BO3s are already playoff games between top teams. That's all. You've already actually changed the quality of the teams participating. BO1s is everyone. So that's number 1 team in the world against number 16 or number 24. So here's an obvious problem with that. BO1 is just the same if you run the numbers. Here's the thing. Just you tell me. If you don't think so, you can disagree on this one. It's totally fine. I just find it almost impossible someone wouldn't agree with the point I'm about to make. Here's the difference. Yes, I imagine if you have the 14th team in the world play the 22nd team in the world in a BO1, it's probably not a massive qualitative difference, especially in MR15, as to whether they win the BO3 or the BO1. But I'll tell you what, if you have the 24th team play against the number 1 team in the world, I actually think that it is insane to imagine that it would be vaguely similar to win a BO1 in even MR15 over a BO3. Like, surely we can see there's a difference between the quality of those two games. And as far as I know, he did not do like when a massive seed plays the worst one. Because by the way, that would be interesting. If he showed me every time team number 1 played number 16, that actually in BO1 it was similar to when they played in Star Series and it was BO3, then I'd say fair play. Maybe you got something there. But I actually think that's an example of where, look, there's an obvious motivation here, which is it's cool to be able to say, actually, we don't need the BO3s. We can just stick with BO1 as it is. It's not a problem. It allows all these TOs to do 3-day events like they used to back then. There's actually it's a contrarian angle too. Every fan's going, it's random. And then you're going, because by the way, people who like stats hate people saying random. What you mean by random is just a higher chance. When you say random, that actually is, if you don't know, guys, random just means it contains every possible pattern. There is no logic or pattern to it. So what we really mean is it's just higher variance. That's a better term to use. So to very quickly address this, I agree. I think this is way better. This is why back in the day, all the TO talent used to go, why the fuck are you going to Star Series? And I used to go, bro, you know the tournament is BO3 full Swiss. Like, it's straight fire. It means, by the way, if you ever saw those 2-1s in 2018, where the one where Simple lost to Mouse, the next one he came back and they won over like SK and Mouse and NRG. Like, that's why he's the GOAT. Because he was playing like 9 BO3s at the fucking LAN and just smurfing all of them against every level of opposition. He wasn't, as you say, the worst ever examples, even though I love the Katowice and the Cologne format for ESL, because essentially, if you also know how TO shit works, it actually is very sort of like clever in the nuance of where it skips things so that like a fan won't notice as much. You are right. There are some really classic examples. I'll give you the most famous one to me. If you ever go back at that 2019 ESL Cologne where Liquid wins the Grand Slam and they beat Vitality and Ziwu in the final, you'll go and look at the playoffs and you'll go, NIP? Because NIP's in the playoffs, the top 6. But it's because there are just like upsets in the BO1s and then they win one BO3 against like, you know, some not even top team themselves, like Heroic or something. And then they're just into that match in the group. That's the one where you go to the round of 6 if you lose. Then they play, I think, like Liquid and just immediately, or Astralis or something, and just, or Vitality, one of them, and just go, I think it's Astralis, and then just go straight into the round of 6. But essentially all they did to do that was win a BO3 against Heroic, who wasn't a top team. That was when BlameF used to just carry as the IGL. And this is not the good Heroic you're all thinking of. So there have been classic examples, even in the great formats, of where there's always a hole somewhere in a league where someone like you're saying can end up with a much, much better sort of placing than what they did at the tournament. Whereas the obvious nightmare one is the worst position ever in Counter-Strike to be in is the team that gets knocked out in the first match at Katowice or Cologne, runs the whole lower bracket and loses narrowly on 3 maps in that last decider match. Because you might have actually had a fucking you might actually have been like the 5th best team in that tournament, but you will look like a bum because you didn't make playoffs. By the way, if you're someone like, I'll do it again, Elige, you don't even get to now be considered a great player, even though you just played way more series and carried some bitch-ass NA player on bullshit Vertigo games that you don't even like. That's some Sisyphus pushing a fucking boulder up a hill. And you do it all, and then you lose 14-16 on the OT game. And then they, the dreaded they, those enemies at HLTV, they come out and they go, here are 28 players who are better than Liege. Like, they don't really. I'm being absolutely ridiculous with my hyperbole. That's what why I'm a specialist at. Lastly, I'll just say, I also definitely agree on the BO5 one. Even though, here's what people don't get. I do think they won the major as a fluke Na'Vi. But I was obviously an insane Na'Vi fan the whole year. I'm a mad fucking Alexi being played fanboy. I think they have for the fucking shit. But I'll tell you what, on paper, I'm sorry, they probably shouldn't have been the team of the year if we'd have actually used format like this. If you ever saw in the BO5s, they went 2 and 3, and one of them, by the way, was against Eternal Fire when Eternal Fire wasn't this good. Like, they actually basically got their ass handed to them by any elite team that they played in a BO5. But if you put them in BO3, they couldn't be stopped. Because then they could lose the nuke, but they win the other two. So the real problem is, I think if you have BO5, especially for majors, it's the same thing you're saying about the BO3 group stage. I'm not going to bitch very much if the underdog wins. You know what? If we go back in time and put the Boston major into a BO5, and then like NIP did at Auckland, then if Cloud9 beats fucking FaZe, I'll just take it on the chin, mate. My problem is that you got murked every other time it wasn't the major. So I think if that was a BO5, they're up 2-1, but they don't win the series. So I agree. I actually think this format is way better. I would love this for majors. Even on, by the way, the whole thing that seeding can't be perfect. Certainly, you could still have, it can happen. The guy who goes 3 and 2 or 2 and 3, and you look at it, he's got the worst draw every time. Every time in each phase, he's got that best possible team. Even so, that's quite rare, and it tends to be one team that can happen to. And we can just use our eyes then and go, right, you just got unlucky that one time. I think the worst thing about the majors is the amount of fucking teams that either go 2-3 or make the playoffs, and it's like, by the way, I once looked this up. Sadly, I'm not a stats guy, so I don't have the number for you right now. It is bonkers how many of the fluke teams in the playoffs just won the 2 BO1s, guys. It is fucking crazy. And sometimes they didn't even win against the good teams. It's like Team Liquid at this last one. Sometimes they just got they had a weird lucky seed in the first round. Then there was an upset in the other one. They drew the easiest team in the 1-0 group, and suddenly they're 2 lives up. I think that is insanity for majors. Again, if there's any tournament we can run BO3s, it's the fucking major. Add a week. Take a week off some out of the calendar, put it on there. It will make it so much better. And also, I'll just throw this out there again. Who the fuck wouldn't have said at the end of that Dust 2 in a perfect world, let's go to map 4. Bro, we were all ready to fucking blast off to the moon. That was insane. But that's the end of the tournament. If that had been a best of 5, holy shit, would that have banged? That would have been so insane. Yeah, there you go.
Say one thing on the Elite one, right? You might want to check what he did in Copenhagen after winning some best of ones. Great rating after the best of ones. Let him down in the best of threes a little bit.
Okay.
Because this is the thing a lot of people missed on the Elite one is because we did look at every tournament.
Sure.
Like if Elite was actually an amazing player in every single elimination decider, he just gets EVPs. He only had 1 EVP all year.
Okay.
And it's because of where he got his rating. It is possible to get EVPs in those teams. It's obviously much harder. And obviously,
I'll just say this. I think
it's not supposed to be a best 20 players right now list.
No, by the way, that's the biggest problem is that people think it is the top 20 players. But it never ever was that ever in history. And it's not even trying to normalise for that. The real problem is this, Nero. Without making it a whole thing, because I haven't got 20 minutes here, mate. We have to end this show soon. I'll just say this. When you say that he didn't carry those games, bro, I would challenge you to find me any other player on the top 20 that had teammates as bad as his, though. Bro, think about what he has to do on that. That is some Nico Sport shit as far as I'm concerned. That was insane, that. But you know what? Here's the difference.
Part of why he made it onto the list.
I'll give you the olive branch, Nero. The difference is I would just cheat and say, here are my top 20 players. And then he'd be like 8th or whatever. If I actually had to do what you do, I do the same thing that Maui can confirm this. If someone does a GOAT list, if you do a GOAT list of NFL quarterbacks, I will say Tom Brady because that's going to include his resume, rings, all that. But if you ask me who the best is, that's not the same as greatest in my opinion. So the best is Peyton Manning. So similarly, if I did a list, I would agree with you, Nero. I probably wouldn't have him that far down the top 20. I'd have probably had him 15th. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't have him noticed like 7th like I would if it was doing the Thorin, who was the best player list. So I get what you were doing there. We're only joking when we say that you guys wrecked him on that one.
Damage per round win. Damage per round win. Number 2 of all the HLTV top 20 players. He's second hardest carry. Second hardest carry.
Okay.
This is the thing. Like that's always the hardest thing. Is like I can always stand there at the end of the year and say, hand on heart, we applied the criteria as well as we could. And,
absolutely. Yeah.
You know. That's
as I said earlier, you're not actually picking the players. You're also having to go off the numbers, of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I'm the only thing that annoys me is when people we can have debates about criteria all day, right? And I think that's the more interesting way to challenge the top 20.
Absolutely,
it's never going to happen. Obviously,
no.
Is to say what you would disagree with. Like even the people saying I'm inventing arena rating. sure, you think we overvalued Arena rating. That's an interesting discussion to have.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. They just say, well, but Elish has like a 1.25 rating. Why is he 19th? It's like, well, obviously we look into it more than that.
Yeah.
And you can get those raw stats.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And by the way, here's another reason that's not your fault.
Can't win.
The reason why the Nico one will always stick in everyone's craw is we already have that catchy name, Nico Sports. The problem is there isn't one for Elish and Complexity. So my joke was it wasn't Complexity, it was simply Elish. Not bad. But I came up with it way too late. He's already out the team. Doesn't fucking matter now, does it? See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then. Or, you know, be a pleb and don't.